Mervinu, $5. Based. All ideas entertained is rare nowadays, it seems. So sad. That's how I feel about it, man.
A few moments later.
But then there are people who show up and they say, Dev, you're lying. Dev, you're bad faith. Dev, you don't actually believe this. At this point, I am just like banning those people.
Harassment is threats of violence, but it's also the day-to-day grind of you're a liar, you suck.
Congrats, Dev. You just argued that you believe that Anita Sarkeesian was right. Hello everyone, Ace here, and today we have a bit of a follow-up with regards to Short Fat Otaku. Because, curiously, a few hours after my original video dropped, Dev decided to update his rules for his Discord server. And just to completely prevent Dev from calling me bad faith, allow me to read the new rules to you word for word. Dev says, quote, "At everyone, by the way, this is the Dev Grows a Backbone arc. If you call me bad faith, I'm going to toss you out of my community. To make this absolutely clear, I'm not saying if you disagree with me, I will toss you out, and if you think I am dumb, I will toss you out. I will never be the kind of person who punishes others for honestly presenting me with criticism in good faith. If you think I need to get educated on a topic, or if my logic is flawed, fine. You are free to say so as much as you like. But if you actually think that your disagreement with me means that I am a liar, that there is just no way I could honestly believe something differently than you, that there must be some malicious intent behind my reason, I'm not going to tolerate that. You've already labeled me as an enemy, and I have no reason to associate with you at that point. Criticism and disagreement is always welcome. Denigrating me because we disagree is not." So to start off, I love the fact that Dev calls everyone who he has decided he's going to ban bad faith themselves. And for the Dev defenders out there who are desperately trying to plug their ears and cover their eyes to pretend that he has done absolutely nothing wrong, allow me to reread the exact part where he argues that everyone that believes he is bad faith is arguing in bad faith themselves. Quote, "I will never be the kind of person who punishes others for honestly presenting me with criticism in good faith." Unquote. In other words, Dev believes that literally every single person who has ever called him bad faith is arguing dishonestly and is not presenting criticism in good faith. Because if you were presenting criticism in good faith and honestly explaining why you believe he is arguing in bad faith, well, then he wouldn't be punishing you by his own reasoning now, would he? So in other words, Dev is, like I said, ultimately arguing that every single person who has ever called him a liar or complained that he argues in bad faith must themselves be arguing in bad faith. Taking it a step further, since Dev is not just banning people on Discord who do this, but also on his YouTube channel, the YouTube channel that he believes is a free speech platform open to all discourse, what Dev is also arguing is that calling him bad faith, or calling him a liar, is not protected in the confines of what constitutes free speech. In other words, it could be said that Dev is ultimately arguing that calling him a liar is a form of harassment, which brings me back to the very intro of this video, where I pointed out that Short Fat Otaku is now unironically arguing that Anita Sarkeesian was right. More specifically, right about what exactly constitutes harassment. Keep in mind that Short Fat Otaku was actively a member of Gamergate back in 2014, because with that context in mind, there is no way to adequately describe with words the sheer irony of this situation. Another irony I have to point out is that Dev is trying to paint this as him growing a backbone, whereas of course if Pikami, for example, had done this back in the day, he would have called it weakness instead. Especially given the context that Dev already called her weak when she was facing actual harassment in the form of death threats, as well as people doxing her, in contrast to the situation Dev finds himself in, where people are calling him bad faith and pointing out exactly why he is bad faith. Or to use Dev's own terminology, the absolute most strongest backbone that Dev can produce is still weaker than what he describes as Pikami's weakness. Speaking of pointing out how Dev argues in bad faith, I believe that in my last video on the topic, I only partially showed a particular tweet thread that after reading through the rest of it again, I now consider to be the magnum opus of Dev arguing in bad faith. A tweet thread that I believe is so blatant that I've decided to not only bring back and show in its entirety, but also read the entire thread to you as well, just to make it as clear as possible that Dev does in fact argue in bad faith. The thread in question begins with Dev stating, quote, "C at not V at T Archcast. This is what I mean by Dev derangement syndrome. It absolutely exists. People are out here creating fake lore about me because they're too incompetent and too brain-rotted to deal with my actual stated positions. I was never pro-lockdown." To which V responds by stating, quote, "You'd vote for Biden who was pro-lockdowns." Dev responds by stating, quote, "Yes, because there is not a perfect candidate who does all the things I want and none of the things I don't." Clown Worldsman responds by stating, quote, "The vax mandates and lockdowns weren't just imperfect, they were evil." Dev responds by stating, quote, "So was trying to steal an election, which is why I would not support Trump." I respond by stating, quote, "Hey, remember when you admitted the FBI was trying to steal the election in favor of Biden, but tried to defend the integrity of the election by saying the attempt failed? Why are you defending the Biden presidency now?" For additional context, allow me to read now the tweet from Dev that I quoted in that last tweet, where Dev states, quote, "No, my argument is that the attempt to mess with the election failed, so the election is still legitimate. We're not talking about if the FBI is innocent, we're talking about if the election is legitimate or not. And for that conversation, yes, their success matters." For even more additional context, I should mention that Dev said these things in a discussion over the Hunter Biden laptop story being suppressed by the FBI, deliberately lying to various social media companies that it was just Russian propaganda, which itself is an example of election manipulation via misinformation, as I've already explained in my previous video on the subject. Point is, back when Dev made these tweets, he openly admitted that he believed that Biden did in fact try to steal the election. And with all of that in mind, let's go back to the original Twitter thread and pick up where we left off now, shall we? As Clown Worldsman responds to the new information by stating, quote, "Now wait a minute, you mean just last year you told him about corrupt behavior from a very important government agency and he accepted it, but then memory hold it and continues to this day defending the government against arguments that it's corrupt with any cope possible. Woo." Clown Worldsman follows up by stating, "Thanks for that, Ace. I won't go into detail, but that one drive-by post was very insightful given the discussion happening over the last few weeks and what I've seen. This is just a what if you had breakfast this morning problem with a different IQ threshold. Waste of time." To this, Dev responds by stating, quote, "The court has indeed found that the FBI overstepped its authority in its dealings with Twitter." To which I respond by stating, quote, "Indeed, and in favor of Biden no less. So then the question becomes, why are you defending the Biden presidency with whataboutism fallacies, and especially when you yourself admit the whataboutism in question is also something the Biden camp has done on top of other evil stuff?" To which Dev responds by stating, "Because when Biden does something good, I'm still going to call it good?" To which I respond with, quote, "So your entire argument is that you think Biden has done more evil than Trump due to Biden both trying to steal and election and the vax mandates, but has also done more good than Trump. This is the second time I've asked you to provide examples of the good, and here is the first." To which, of course, I link myself asking him the previous time. Of course, at this point, Dev does what he always does when faced with a response that he can't actually counter, and decides to run for the hills and pretend that my reply does not exist, which is why that is where this particular tweet thread ends. But the big lesson to learn here is that this is an example of Dev openly admitting that he'll happily defend Biden trying to steal the election, as well as doing the vax mandates on top of that, but then will find Trump to be completely irredeemable because he believes that Trump tried to steal the election as well. What's funny is that if Dev had any logical consistency here, he would have ultimately have had to come to the conclusion that the Eastman memo was, even in the most uncharitable interpretation that he took, that even under that interpretation, the Eastman memo is still completely vindicated due to Biden's previous actions. And that not only did Trump not do anything wrong with the Eastman memo, but that it's ultimately Biden who is utterly unelectable because he tried to steal the election. I took great care to make sure I could fit this entire thread into one single image, because posting this one single image on Dev's Discord server is effectively equivalent equivalent to walking around Beijing holding up a photo of Tank Man. It is utterly irrefutable proof that Dev argues in bad faith, and so it would be extremely inconvenient for Short Fat Otaku and his Discord moderators if viewers of mine who happen to still be on his Discord channel started sharing this image around as much as possible. It would also be extremely inconvenient for Dev if this image also started showing up in his Twitter replies too. But speaking of further evidence of Dev arguing in bad faith, I believe I should also take some time out in this video to provide a shout out to the Aristocratic Utensil, who has also done an excellent job covering the many examples of Dev arguing in bad faith, as well as the sort of tactics he tries to use in his dishonesty. For this reason, I will be linking his latest video on Dev in this matter. For what it's worth, I will admit I haven't seen too much of the Aristocratic Utensil's work, and there is a fair amount I disagree with what he says in the videos that I have seen, but I will say that when it comes to Dev, he is absolutely spot on. And I'll also mention that he does at least also seem to be more open-minded than Dev at this point. My overall position, in other words, is that I see the Aristocratic Utensil as being somewhat misguided, but still ultimately honest with his opinions, unlike Dev. So make of that what you will. I believe I've covered everything that needs to be, so I'll finish by stating that I will of course be providing a link in the description below to the tweet thread I read, so you can check it out for yourself if you should so desire. I'll also be providing a copy of the image of that tweet thread in its entirety for you to do with as you wish. Once again, I must state that I do not condone harassment in any way. Fortunately, sending this image on its own to Dev is not a form of harassment. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.